Have you ever opened a can of corned beef and stopped for a second? Because if you think about it, the name doesn't make any sense. There's beef in the can, but there's definitely no corn. No yellow kernels. No sweet corn flavor. Nothing even remotely corn-like. So why is it called corned beef? It sounds like it should be some kind of beef cooked with corn, maybe a stew or a casserole. But instead, it's just salty beef. Which raises a strange question. If there's no corn in corned beef, where did the name come from? And the answer turns out to be a small piece of history hiding in plain sight. Most people assume the name must come from the ingredients. That's how food names usually work. Chicken soup has chicken. Peanut butter has peanuts. Cornbread has corn. So naturally, when people hear corned beef, they assume corn must be involved somewhere. Maybe it used to be cooked with corn. Maybe the cattle were fed corn. Or maybe it's just a weird old recipe name that stuck around. But none of those explanations actually hold up. Because historically, corned beef had absolutely nothing to do with corn as a vegetable. And that's where the confusion begins. The real misunderstanding comes from how the word corn used to be used. Today, when we say corn, we're talking about the yellow vegetable, the one on the cob. But hundreds of years ago, the word meant something completely different. Back then, corn simply meant a small grain or particle, not a specific plant, just a tiny hard piece of something. People used the word for all kinds of grains, wheat, barley, oats, and anything that looked like small kernels. And that includes something very important: salt. Now imagine life before refrigerators. No freezers. No cold storage. No supermarkets. If you slaughtered an animal, you had a serious problem. Fresh meat spoils quickly. So if people wanted meat to last more than a few days, they needed a way to preserve it. And one of the oldest methods humans discovered was salt curing. Salt pulls water out of meat, and bacteria need moisture to grow. So when you cover meat with salt, it lasts much longer. It's a simple trick, but it was incredibly powerful. In fact, entire food cultures were built around it. But here's the key detail most people don't realize. The salt used for preserving meat wasn't the fine table salt we use today. It was big, rough crystals of salt. Chunky, hard, grain-like. And in Old English, those crystals were called corns of salt, little salt grains, or in other words, salt corns. So when butchers preserved beef, they would rub the meat with these large grains of salt. They'd pack the beef with them. Sometimes they'd completely cover the meat. The beef was literally coated in corns of salt. And that's how the name was born. Beef preserved with salt corns became known as corned beef. Once you know that, the name suddenly makes perfect sense. It has nothing to do with corn the vegetable. It's really describing the process. Beef cured with grains of salt. And that method was incredibly important in the past. Because salted meat could last for months. That meant it could survive long winters. It could be stored for long sea voyages. And it could feed soldiers and sailors far from home. In fact, corned beef became one of the most common preserved meats in the world. Ships carried it across oceans. Armies packed it in rations. Explorers relied on it when fresh food wasn't available. Long before refrigeration, corned beef was basically survival food. Over time, the dish spread everywhere. In Britain and Ireland, salted beef became a major export. In the United States, it became famous in deli sandwiches. In the Caribbean, canned corned beef is cooked with rice. In the Philippines, it's often fried with onions and served with garlic rice and eggs for breakfast. And in many places around the world, the rectangular can of corned beef is a pantry staple. The recipe stayed, but the meaning of the word corn slowly changed. Language evolves. Words shift. And eventually, corn stopped meaning small grain. Instead, it became the name of a specific crop, the yellow maize we recognize today. But by the time that change happened, the name corned beef was already centuries old. So the name stayed, even though the meaning of the word had changed. That's why the name feels so confusing today. We're interpreting an old word with its modern meaning. But the name is really a linguistic time capsule. It's a reminder of how people used to speak, and how they used to preserve food. So the real question isn't actually, why is there no corn in corned beef? The smarter question is, what did the word corn mean when the dish was named? And once you see it that way, everything clicks. Corned beef isn't beef with corn. It's beef cured with grains of salt. A simple preservation method that kept meat edible long before refrigerators existed. A tiny piece of language history hiding inside an everyday food. And the next time you open a can of corned beef, you'll know something most people don't. The corn isn't missing. It was never corn in the first place. Thank you for watching Ordinary Explained. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden stories behind everyday things, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments, what ordinary things should we explain next?